Today we're taking a look at OutBox, an internet-connected scanner I built that allows me to post what I'm up to on Twitter without having to actually ever use Twitter. This is Game of Knowing. From hate speech to ads, my relationship with Twitter is honestly pretty toxic. I'm not quite ready to leave the community I've found there yet, but at least OutBox allows me a way to reclaim some agency. When I really want to post something, I can just put it in, press a button, and it automatically uploads a picture. No timelines and no addictive UI. OutBox basically works like this. When I press a button, the Raspberry Pi takes a picture with this USB webcam. The image is then compressed and saved as a JPEG. It's really small and low res, so you just focus on exactly what I'm trying to communicate. Then, the Pi sends it over SCP to a cloud web server and triggers an if-this-then-that webhook that tells Twitter to grab the image and post it for the world to see. All the Python code to do this is up on my GitHub, and I documented it so it should be pretty easy for you to remix it or build one of your own. The electronics aren't actually all that big. It's just a Raspberry Pi, a webcam, some LEDs, and a couple of switches. But I wanted OutBox to have a real presence to it and almost feel like an appliance. I also just joined a hackerspace with a laser cutter, so this was the perfect opportunity to learn how to use that and build a striking wooden enclosure. I had to cut my cheap 3/16" plywood down to size to fit in the laser machine, and it was just barely strong enough to cut all the way through, so it took me a couple of tries, but eventually I got it. As usual, all the files are up on Thingiverse. Then I used my vinyl cutter to make a stencil and spray painted OutBox onto the front. Next, it was time to install the electronics, and I started with a ring of warm white LEDs around where the webcam will go, so that I can use this even at night. This was a little fiddly and took a lot of soldering because I decided to wire them all up in parallel, but once they were all soldered and glued together, it works really well. Then I screwed in the Raspberry Pi. This is a Pi 3A+, but it doesn't really matter because we don't need much speed or memory for this application. I epoxied the webcam in, making sure that the manual focus ring could still spin freely. Next, I attached the power distribution board. This whole thing is being run off of an external 5-volt brick, so this is really just a bunch of screw terminals and 100 microfarad cap to smooth things out at startup. Finally, I added in the two top panel switches that make up all of OutBox's UI. The big red one is a shutter button, and the little metal one is actually an arming switch to help protect me from bumping the shutter and accidentally posting something. Keep dreaming, Twitter. Then it was time for the final fit and assembly, which just took a lot of these little M3 screws. And here it is, looking gorgeous. Both of the switches have cool red indicator lights, so along with that warm white ring light on the inside, the whole thing has this luminous glow at night. It's almost haunting. Overall, I'm super happy with how this turned out, and I've already started to use it a bit. It's clunky and inconvenient, but that's kind of the point. If I really want to post, I can do that without getting sucked into Jack's hellscape, and that's pretty valuable to me. I think we're all finding ways to survive and carve out places of refuge in this world of toxic platforms, and I'd love to hear about what you do to stay afloat. Leave a comment or make a video response and maybe we can compare some notes. And that about wraps it up for today's video. Don't forget to check out the links to 3D models and code in the description. If you want to help me make these projects and build our little community, I just set up a Patreon where you can support the channel and pick up some cool perks along the way. I really appreciate your help, and I'd love any input you might have on new projects to tackle. Thanks for watching, and keep creating.